Ukrainian soldiers are carrying out a successful offensive operation in the southern part of the Dnipropetrovsk region. In the area near the village of Ternov, assault troops broke through enemy defenses and advanced more than 10 kilometers. The operation's ongoing. Air assault troops are also conducting offensive actions in the direction of Oleksandrivka. In one of the villages, as a result of a precise strike on a group of invaders, 10 Russian occupiers and their equipment were destroyed.
This is probably a matter of social psychology. The extraordinary and tragic willingness of the Russian people to sacrifice their very lives on the battlefield, not for any noble cause or greater national interest, but solely to merely fulfill the personal whims and calculated political wishes of their authoritarian dictator, Vladimir Putin. His inner circle, his generals, and even his colonels. Basically, ordinary Russian people and Russian soldiers are just expendable cannon fodder.
Ukraine's general staff reports that since the day began, the Russians tried hardest to break Ukrainian positions, and defense forces repelled them mainly in the Hulyapole, Pokrovsk, and Kostiantinovka sectors. Experts note the invaders haven't met their goals in either the south or east of Ukraine.
It's already been 2 years, and they still can't accomplish their goals in the entire Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad agglomeration. Our forces there in both Haishain and Radinska are fighting, holding their ground, and not allowing the enemy to carry out these plans. Although, in part, they're once again redeploying forces from this area to places where, as they see it, there's a need to intensify combat operations, including, from this perspective, to strengthen these directions. And now, in Zaporizhia, as well as in the north and Livipol, the situation is developing. That's how they're responding.
The Tavria paratroopers have demonstrated effective work in destroying Russian occupiers in the area of Mernhograd-Donetsk region. The soldiers note that these FPV crews are operating almost right up to the very line of contact, striking enemy personnel shelters and remotely mining the Russians' primary logistical routes. Just in the past day, Ukraine's defense forces destroyed 13 Russian tanks, 7 armored fighting vehicles, 73 artillery systems, 4 multiple rocket launchers, and 2 air defense systems, burned over 200 pieces of special equipment, and shot down more than 2,000 enemy drones. In addition, just yesterday, Ukrainian soldiers eliminated another 950 Russian occupiers along the entire front line. Thus, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the total combat losses of Russian troops since the start of the full-scale invasion have reached nearly 1,275,000 soldiers.
Let's continue the broadcast. We are joined by Dmytro Snigaryev, a military and political analyst. Hello? Dmytro, good morning.
And
Thank you for always finding the time to join us. We'd like to talk about the fact that the Dnipropetrovsk region has been almost completely liberated from enemy forces. There are just a few areas left, literally 3 settlements that still need to be cleared. How do you assess the situation, and what do you think? Is it possible that troops from there will be redeployed to other parts of the front?
let's start by discussing the nature of the operation in the Dnipropetrovsk region. It's important to note that this operation had not only military, but also political significance. In fact, Ukraine's defense forces disrupted the Russian side's plan to use the Dnipropetrovsk region as a bargaining chip in negotiations. Let me explain what this is about. The Russian Federation tried to create a precedent for what they called a territorial exchange. In other words, they proposed to swap the occupied areas of the Dnipropetrovsk, Sumy, and Kharkiv regions for the territories in Donetsk region controlled by Ukraine's defense forces. And accordingly, the successful deoccupation of areas in the Dnipropetrovsk region, let me remind you, according to the Ukrainian president, that's about 430 square kilometers. This is significant, not just militarily, but even more so politically, in terms of the success of Ukraine's counteroffensive. And notice the Russians no longer have any arguments to justify their position when it comes to exerting military and political pressure on the Ukrainian leadership. And just to give Ukrainian viewers a sense of how successful this operation has been, 430 square kilometers is, for context, larger than most of the Ukrainian capital. So these are truly significant tactical achievements. And for comparison, during the same period, the occupiers managed to seize no more than 42 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory. So for the very first time in almost a full year, our brave and dedicated defenders have successfully managed to reclaim and deoccupy more territory than was lost. And there's another very encouraging and positive aspect to the situation as well. Ukraine's defense forces have completely shattered the long-standing myth, unfortunately spread across various mainstream Western media outlets, that Ukraine's defense forces have no operational reserves, absolutely no strategic ability to conduct counteroffensive operations, and should concentrate their efforts exclusively on an active defensive posture. As we can see, the highly successful military advancement at the junction of the Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia regions has effectively and decisively disproved these erroneous and mistaken assessments from Western media. And in fact, even NATO country generals acted as experts in these cases. And the main point to consider here is the critical internal factor. The Ukrainian people were clearly shown the impressive capabilities of Ukraine's own defense forces during this, the fifth year of the ongoing full-scale invasion. In other words, it was made clear that the possibility of deoccupying Ukrainian families, primarily by military means, is the top priority for Ukraine's political leadership.
A significant number of military analysts are currently reporting that Ukrainian forces have successfully regained a level of tactical superiority with strike drones and are now actively launching strikes against Russian logistical networks located 50 to 60 kilometers away from the front line. And the series of recent precision strikes on Donetsk, specifically on the drone base, along with the recent powerful explosions in Mariupol, where several large ammunition depots detonated, are clear and undeniable evidence of this. Furthermore, there are many other significant examples as well that we can point to. What is your opinion about these strikes?
According to the Ukrainian Defense Report, they have stabilized the production of strike drones, FPV drones, and accordingly, reconnaissance drones. I'll quote Russian telegram channels, specifically the so-called military segment. In some areas, it takes fighters 3 days to reach their observation posts, even though it's only a 15 to 17 kilometer walk. Rotating personnel at strong points has become difficult. And accordingly, this isn't just about rotating personnel, but also about the inability to conduct offensive operations along the entire length of the Russian-Ukrainian front. Let me remind you, the width of the Ukrainian kill zones is currently up to 15 kilometers, which effectively nullifies the Russian troops' ability to quickly redeploy operational reserves and use strike assets, primarily tube artillery. As a result, it also negates their main advantage, which is heavy armored vehicles. So, as we can see, the introduction of innovative technologies by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense and Ukroboronprom has allowed the Ukrainian side to minimize and practically eliminate the main advantages of the occupying country's army. These advantages were in manpower, heavy armored vehicles, and strike assets. Now, regarding strike drones, which is what you're talking about, at this moment, the recorded historical record is a strike of more than 700 Ukrainian drones in a single day on the territory of the occupying country. Before this, Ukraine's defense forces could only manage strikes with no more than 100 to 150 drones. And this serves as clear evidence that, once again, we have precisely that strategic ace up our sleeve that the American president talked about. But I'll also remind you of the very recent and significant statement from the head of Frontline, a company that produces not only Flamingo, but also strike drones, who said that the Ukrainian side can now quite easily manufacture and produce up to 200 fixed-wing strike drones per day. Furthermore, in addition to this, the statement from the representative of the Ukrainian defense company clearly points out the fact that they are currently working on significantly increasing and scaling up this number by at least 2 times.
I'd also like to clarify, since you mentioned Ukrainian missiles, that they were used in Bryansk. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine confirmed that a strategic facility in Russia's Bryansk region was hit. The successful strikes were carried out with Storm Shadow missiles. Significant damage to production facilities has been recorded. Russians are widely sharing videos of the aftermath of this attack, showing its effects. According to them, about 10 explosions were heard. I'd like to note that the Silicon L microelectronics plant produces control systems for all types of missiles in the Russian army's arsenal, and specifically for Iskanders. The commander-in-chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported the operation to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He called such strikes a completely justified response to the aggressors. I'd like to hear your assessment, more precisely, your evaluation of this operation targeting a strategic military facility of the Russian Federation. Of course, missiles from our partners were used here, but regarding our own missiles, which are still in development, maybe you have more detailed information about the fluorine monophosphide 7 and fluorine monophosphide 9, which will be used in future strikes? Please, Dmytro.
Legitimate military targets have already been struck. This facility is a key enterprise of the Russian military-industrial complex, currently producing microelectronics for the guidance systems of all Russian munitions without exception. That's why this is a unique facility in the Russian Federation, created, in fact, through the implementation of Western technologies. And destroying this legitimate military target will reduce the capabilities of the Russian military-industrial complex to produce munitions for their ongoing terror campaign against the peaceful civilian population of Ukraine. As for scaling up the fluorine monophosphide 7 and fluorine monophosphide 9 missiles, it should be noted that the fluorine monophosphide 7, according to the developers themselves, will be a budget version of the American ATACMS. The range for hitting targets is over 300 kilometers, but most importantly, the warhead is twice as powerful as that of the American ATACMs. The FP-59 has a target range of up to 850 kilometers. For Russians, to clarify, that means Moscow and the Moscow region. And what's special about them is that these are ballistic missiles. So the Russian air defense system won't be able to intercept these Ukrainian strike weapons, despite the layered air defense setup in Moscow and the Moscow region. Let me emphasize again, Ukraine now has a real trump card to put pressure on the Russian Federation. An 850-kilometer range means virtually all oil refineries on the territory of the Russian Federation will be within potential striking distance for the Ukrainian side. And let me remind you, there are no more than 40 of them. And most importantly, regardless of global oil prices, the destruction of oil and refining facilities eliminates the Russian Federation's ability to earn income from selling gasoline and fuel to commercial consumers. That's why, in the current situation in the Middle East, specifically the rise in oil prices, the Russian Federation will not be able to take advantage. And if I may, since we are currently live on the air, I would like to take a moment to warn you about the Russian side's upcoming plans. At the moment, there is operational information about a provocation being prepared by Russian special services, right on the eve of possible high-level meetings, with the intention of accusing the Ukrainian side of using chemical weapons. According to the Specialized Analytical and Research Department of Prava Sprava, in the Sloviansk direction, specifically within the Siversk area, there has been official confirmation of the presence of chemical protection units from the regular armed forces of the Russian Federation, as well as the confirmed presence of combat chemical agents. Intelligence reports from Russian special services suggest these could be used against Russian soldiers themselves, but the accusation of using chemical weapons strictly prohibited by international conventions would, accordingly, be directed at the Ukrainian forces. This is a very dangerous scenario, especially on the eve of the negotiation process. Its goal is to discredit Ukraine and the Ukrainian defense forces precisely by accusing them of using banned chemical weapons.
Subscribe to UATV English and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.